Hello, this is the Molten Man battle set from the upcoming Spider-Man Far From Home movie. Now, to kind of set things up properly and give us a good base for checking this out, let's first take a look at what we've seen up to this point in the trailer for Far From Home of Molten Man. Now let's see some other toy companies' rendition of the same character.
Oh, that's hot.
And another.
That's hot.
Now let's look at Lego's version again.
No! No! No!
So based on that context, it's difficult to take this seriously. But fortunately, I don't have to take it seriously because it's a toy. And it doesn't even have to be super realistic, but it does have to be a good toy. And, you know, toys ought to look decent, but they also should play pretty well. The build of this is actually pretty cool. It went together nicely, and I really like the transparent orange pieces, especially those larger rock kind of textured pieces. Now they have some of them on this set that are just plain trans orange, and then they have some that have some print as well. Some nice bright metallic gold print or paint applications, and it's very thick, the paint that goes on there, so it looks very nice and bright. Do be careful if you get this set and you build it. In the instructions, the pieces look very similar. The ones that have the gold on them, like this, and the ones that do not, like that there, they look very similar in the instructions, just because the hues are very similar between them. And I did make that mistake a couple of times, maybe a few times while building it, and swapped them back and forth. But I like those pieces. I like how they look. I like how they're used on this. And overall, I get what they're going for. I get the overall appearance. I can see how it's molten and it's kind of dripping. You know, everything is very hot and it has, you know, bits that are dripping off. The face is a little bit difficult to get over. Maybe if that piece had been against a gold part, you know, if all that printing had been against a gold part rather than a gunmetal gray part, that would have been better. Maybe if they'd done that as a trans orange piece with even more printing on it so you don't see through quite too much, that may have been better. But it kind of ruins the look a little bit, as do all these pieces that are attached to it. But that's supposed to represent different parts of things from around the street that have gotten stuck. They've gotten partly melted and partly gobbled up by this creature, whatever it is, you know, as it goes around with all the molten metal and just gets stuff stuck in it. And it's easy enough to leave those things off if you don't want them on there. I think the girders make sense. I think they're supposed to represent I-beams or something. Got a couple of them on there, and everything here is decently posable. So the legs have ball joints and they can move forward and back. You might need to move one of these things out of the way, but I mean, there's room here, and there is decent stability with these fairly large feet, so you can easily get this into a moving pose, make it look like it's moving. Even if it's not the most realistic thing, you can, you know, at least get that simulation for the sake of play, and that's really important. It almost is like this has knees or something, which is something that, you know, Lego doesn't do all that frequently. It's going to be moved up and down just a little bit. All these things can be moved around in different ways. It can be brought in and out. Like I said, they can be removed easily also. It can be angled up and down. The arms have ball joints, 2 of them, major ones, and they have good range of motion. You know, you can bring this all the way out here. Let's see, what's the best way I can get this across? About 45 degrees across the body. That's not too bad. Things are a little bit more blocked on this side because of this detail here, but you can still bring this hand across, and the hand can be opened up so that can be used to, hey, that's actually a pretty cool look right there. Let me turn this head. The head can be turned such as it is. Look at that. Kind of looks like a superhero that way, you know, or maybe he's a kung fu master who has some elemental powers. Obviously, this is a 6-stud shooter here. But yeah, you know, you can get some decent poses out of it. And if, like I say, if you don't take it too seriously, it actually ends up being an okay toy. Just looks like a little bit of a mess to me. Part of that is absolutely intentional. But part of it is, really honestly, part of it is from the limitation of budget. You know, they only had a certain amount of budget to make this. They wanted to make the set have a certain price, and that required using a certain limitation in the number of pieces. And I think that given that limitation, the designer did an okay job. That face, though. No. This Marvel superhero set comes with Firefighter. He's a real world hero. No, seriously, firefighters are real world heroes. Much respect to them. But, this is supposed to be just a generic dude, just doing his job out in the city. But I actually appreciate the inclusion of this for some reason. I like the somewhat unique build. I don't think they've done that before with the old flintlock pistol there to create a different shape for a fire extinguisher. And it's nice to get another minifig head that is not just a white dude. To be honest with you, just have some kind of variation. So yeah, it's just a generic figure, but I think it's good to get. This is Mysterio, and in the movie he's played by a guy named Jake.
Jake. It's Jake.
You don't want any part of this.
In Lego form, he doesn't have a face. Yeah, no face. So if you want a face reveal, that's just too bad. I think that Lego ought to have included a face, a helmet off version of Mysterio in one of these sets, but I am not sure if Lego even knew when they started development of these sets and these figures, whether they would show a helmet off version of them in the trailers, or if that would be kind of a secret. So I can understand and absolutely forgive the inclusion of Mysterio only in fully helmeted form in these sets. And I think that they did a really good job with this figure, to be honest. I think that the printing looks good. I think this interesting inverted fishbowl style helmet works really well. I think it'll work well in other contexts also. And these Power Blast things look good and they play well also. They just fire off nice and straight. They don't cause any damage to the figure when you use them. The cape is a good material. Yeah, everything about this to me is good. And then this is one version of Spider-Man. Folks have been saying this is his stealth suit version. And he's got a lot of web stuff. They've included an entire pack of the web items, the web, just web pieces. So here you've got a large web. It's just been assembled together with 4 of those parts and some small connectors. And this is just a straight web piece with a clip at the end so he can hang from things. They've got one of these or an extra one of these. They've got the web handcuffs that can be used by a minifigure, just held with one hand. And they've got a couple of these smaller ones. So anytime you see any one of these pieces, you will see all of them included together in one set. But let me just get all this stuff out of the way so you can focus on the figure. Focus, yes, on the figure itself. This is pretty cool. I like the gray printing on the legs. It's very matte. It has just almost no glossiness to it whatsoever, which is cool. Has a nice effect. And overall, the figure, I think, looks pretty good. I mean, it would have been nice to get printing going all the way around the side, but it's not bad as it is. Yeah, this is another one where I think for what it is well done. Here are the extra or spare pieces, especially on the right, including some pretty cool stuff. You got the gunmetal gray colored pistol there. This is a very useful piece. You got some hollow studs as well. And then these are just extra studs for the 6-stud shooter on Molten Man. This is a $30 set in the US, and that's where the limitation in budget comes into play that I mentioned earlier. Lego designers have to design sets based on budgets, not the other way around. They don't get to have their own designs priced after they're built. So that's a real difficult thing to do. That really sets some significant constraints on what you can do, and it's way harder to do than it appears. Again, overall, I feel like the designer didn't do a bad job here. I definitely like Molten Man better without all the stuff attached to him, or attached to it. But it really is the head, I think, that hurts this the most. A lot of the body parts I actually like much better than I originally thought based on the initial pictures. But the head I actually like much less than when I saw the initial pictures, especially when you start viewing it from the side. I feel like, and especially compared to some of the other reference material, Lego did have access to some reference materials for this character. I feel like they would have done better with a construction style head, like one of these in general style, or maybe one of the newer version, but in gold, or even something like this, but in just a regular trans orange rather than trans neon orange. It's a slightly more skull-like appearance, more of a Terminator look, and then they could just add a little bit of extra stuff onto the outsides. But this is very very juniors-ish in my opinion. That just kind of takes some of the credibility away from it. Good figures, all three of them, I think. Poseability is pretty decent. Actually, the joints don't have quite as much friction as they need for the weight of this, but they're okay. They do work. And yeah, value. I think value's okay here as well for the volume of stuff that you get. $30, yeah, it's not bad. I think 25 would be better, but given the part count of about 300, I think it's priced decently fairly. Maybe one more figure would have made it feel better, or just, like I said, $25. Yeah, if you can find this on discount for $25, then you're in good shape if you like what it looks like. But that's all I've got to say about this one. No point in beating any dead horse any further. If you want to see how this went together, like I said, it was a pretty decent build process. You can check that out in either my speed build, as a time-lapse form with some musical accompaniment, or in the pure build version. I will link to both of them on the screen right now. Pure build has no music, it is in real time, and just lets you hear the clicking sounds of putting the parts together. Thanks for watching. I will talk to you again very soon.